Since 1926, the State Theater has been an entertainment centerpiece in Eau Claire. Learn about the history and hear memories from community members. WEAU 13 News presents Stories of the State.
In 1883, the Grand Opera House opened as a performance stage. It was the first place in Eau Claire to begin showing movies in the late 1890s. The Grand Opera House was located on Barstow Street, and the area became the center for movie and performance spaces during the early to mid-1900s. In the mid-1920s, the Minnesota-based Finkelstein and Rubin chain of theaters built and opened the State Theater in downtown Eau Claire. The theater sat on the former site of Reed's Hall, a public meeting hall in the 1850s. The $315,000 theater was considered the brightest gem in the nearly 100 theaters that were part of the Finkelstein and Rubin chain.
You tried to make it like a palace with a theme, that was the idea. And this was a good attempt at it right here.
Gene Grings was a longtime theater operator in Eau Claire and owned and operated the State for a brief time in the 1980s.
The theater also had a fantastic Wurlitzer organ up and mounted on a hydraulic lift that would raise it up above the stage, and they'd play music. And then in the lofts, there were all these tubes, and it was great music.
The State made its grand opening in January of 1926 with an onstage orchestra, comedy act, and the silent movie Classified, starring Corinne Griffin.
You had the movies, and you had something called vaudeville. You'd have dancers, acrobats, dog shows, and they perform in theaters like this. This was a vaudeville house.
The impact of the Great Depression and as movies transitioned from silent to talkies in the early 1930s, it brought an end to vaudeville traveling shows. And the State focused on showing movies.
So I saw Star Wars here. I saw all the James Bond movies here.
A lot of people were going to movies at the time. It was a good way of doing it. It was always air conditioned, and you could get lost in here. That was the neat part about the theaters.
Dave Astrike worked in several of the downtown cinemas and remembered his days as being a projectionist.
And when we first started, switched reel to reel back and forth every 15 to 18 minutes.
It could be a very busy place. We played Jaws to a packed house. We played Star Wars here. That was jammed for about 16, 18 weeks or so.
The State Theater was wrapped around another building on the front that included several other businesses, including the Greyhound bus station, restaurant, and a bar and bowling alley in the basement. During the 1950s and 60s, the State Theater was updated with a box office expansion and a new marquee. The renovations covered and destroyed much of the original artistic design.
And it was basically a movie theater at that point. Everything had been painted one color, no differentiation. None of this existed. The columns were, you didn't even know that they were really columns.
The large auditorium at the State was practical for its time. However, as the film industry began producing more movies and consumers viewed movies differently, the size of the theater posed unique issues for the future of the State.
This theater, you didn't fill those 1,200 seats anymore.
Grings says the movie theater industry is always evolving, and it was difficult to keep a theater updated with all the ongoing changes.
Such as widescreen and stereophonic sound and 4-track, and then eventually a stadium seating, and now reclining seating.
Unlike other downtown Eau Claire theaters, the size and layout of the State prevented it from being easily split into multiple screens.
You can't survive on one screen yet, and two is not that easy either. Things have changed.
Throughout the 1970s and 80s, many downtown Eau Claire businesses had shut down or moved into other areas of town.
You had multiplexes popping up all over. In the middle 80s, there were more theaters closed in Eau Claire than were open, because at one time there was 5 or 6 theaters in town.
New theaters were operating near the malls. This caused all of the downtown theaters to close for at least a period during the 80s.
Attendance was down, and people went out to the mall. That's why downtown died. Everybody went to the mall.
The State Theater, located in the heart of downtown Eau Claire, and once considered to be the finest theater in the region, was now simply deteriorating, in need of major repair, with declining ticket sales and neighbored by closed businesses.
It's a wonderful theater. We saw a lot of movies here when we were kids.
After more than 50 years of showing hundreds of movies to thousands of moviegoers from all over western Wisconsin, in 1982, the State Theater closed its doors.
We needed to have an umbrella organization that would encompass all the different arts groups.
The Eau Claire Regional Arts Council formed in 1985. The area had a growing arts community based on a variety of different people and different groups. The original goal of the council was to help fundraise and promote the arts within the community. Shortly after they formed, Grings approached Vernie Miller, who was the founding president of the council, and offered to sell the State Theater to the group.
And we finally agreed that we really needed a space because that's what would bring the arts groups together.
The group decided to shift focus and take on the project of buying the state.
I said, well, I would sell it for less than half what I paid for it the year before.
Grings and his partner, downtown developer Warren Barberg, offered to sell the theater.
She worked really hard to try to raise money to buy the theater, but to no avail. I said, you know, I've decided I'll sell it to you for $1. And she said, well, I think that's doable.
Mr. Grings and Ms. Barberg came forward and offered to sell this building to the arts for $1. We jumped at the opportunity.
Today I feel like gold medalists. We've won the first phase of the interest in creating an art center.
The donation of the state meant the Eau Claire Regional Arts Council would now have a home, but a home that needed some work.
Still structurally sound, but needs a new roof and insulation. The heating and ventilation systems and the stage equipment must also be replaced. Water has damaged some interior fixtures, and 1,100 seats must be reupholstered.
And it was like Phantom of the Opera, because you walked in and over on the stage, the drapes are kind of gnarly and hanging, and the stage floor was all buckled like that, and everything's peely and smelly.
We realized that it was going to take a lot of effort and a lot of money to refurbish this place.
Carol Spencer, one of the original founders and board members of the council, says it took a substantial amount of fundraising and volunteering to get the project going.
We tried to get money from any source we possibly could. And many groups were quite good about providing some funding, but nothing huge.
About $600,000 was needed, and with some creative fundraising, support from the city of Eau Claire, and a donation from the L.E. Phillips Foundation, the theater received the funding.
My kids, they got to sign their names, and they're still out on the back
of the
lobby because they brought their piggy banks with their pennies and their dimes, anything to raise money.
We got the financing, the basic financing, and began the project. And the project was, it was quite the effort.
Bob Carr, a longtime director, performer, and teacher, was instrumental in the renovation process.
God, we worked so hard in here. I remember down here on the floor, you know, they had to re-cement the floor at a different angle. So we had a whole army of volunteers with scrub brushes and solvents.
Carr says working on the state really brought the local arts groups together for the first time.
But you had your actors over here, and you had your symphony over here, and you had the visual artists here, and we never worked together. But it was so fun because we're all working on the same dream, and we were down there scrubbing this 50 years worth of crap off this floor so they could lay new cement in.
The original vaudeville stage wasn't designed for full theater productions.
The changes at the stage, little things like the cleaning up of the backstage, as well as opening up stage left for more storage of pieces.
An addition was added to stage left for additional storage, and the original proscenium was removed to make a larger opening for the stage. The Minneapolis Auditorium had closed around the same time the state's renovation process was going on. A very significant bit of luck for the state due to their lack of funds, allowing an updated fly rail system, lights and draperies to be acquired for very little cost from the auditorium, while greatly improving the stage at the state.
They were going to tear that place down, so a lot of the equipment, the fly rail, a lot of the roping, the rigging, a lot of the beam up on top all got cut loose and brought in. And again, if we wouldn't have things like that, this place wouldn't have made it off the ground.
Volunteers are what drove the renovation process.
It was not just the arts community, it was the community at large. We had carpenters and we had painters who were donating their time just to make this a success.
Changing the curtain, we volunteered, a lot of people, a lot of other people did a lot of volunteering too.
Carr says that making the theater more accessible was part of the renovation process.
Under no circumstances are we going to have an art center where I can't go to the bathroom. So we have the Shirley Corinian bathroom. Now that was major, because that's basically in another building. That's in the inner office building.
During the renovation, The goal was to restore as much of the artistic design of the original theater and lobby.
Try to look through the chipping paint and the garish colors and try to imagine what it must have looked like.
Bob Carr and Jean Leese, a local artist, had to climb into tight ceiling areas to discover some of the original decor.
Back in the 50s, they had added the box office, and so they had lowered the ceiling, and I crawled over there, and there, right on the top, was an original portion of the original ceiling.
When you find an artifact like that up there and you know what it looked like before, it just makes sense. If you can bring it back to that, you should bring it back to it, especially since it's an art center.
Leese spent 2 to 3 months restoring the lobby. Construction work continued, restoring light fixtures, rebuilding the stage, and freshening up the look of the theater while restoring some of the original flair.
We wanted something that was more subdued, more current with the happening that was going on, the modern colors, that type of thing.
It's a local group. This is a local theater. It's primarily for the local arts groups.
It's really neat. It's something I'll remember for a long time because the state's going to be here for a while.
In late April of 1988, the state reopened as Eau Claire's Performing Arts Center. Construction work continued all the way up to the opening curtain call. Wayne Merrick, the executive director of the Eau Claire Children's Theater, directed the first show, Cinderella at the State, for the Chippewa Valley Theater Guild.
You know, as the deadline started approaching, there was that chance that it wouldn't quite be open in time for that weekend of the show. But as it was, it did open the State Theater.
Everything looked beautiful out in the lobby and out in the audience, and backstage was a disaster.
Cinderella opened, and the State was off and running.
It was such a magic time. We had all the television stations, reporters, and we christened the outside with a bottle of champagne.
Prior to the State, arts groups had to rent schools and other spaces and work around schedules. The opening of the State created a venue dedicated to the arts. Ann Sessions, executive director of the Chippewa Valley Theater Guild, says opening the State really made people aware of the arts in the community.
We were performing at North High School, which was great, and here we get the chance to really perform before bigger audiences in a beautiful, renovated theater.
I think it's the center point of that culture because it is the only place. You know, it's the one performing arts center in Eau Claire, so you come here to do your art.
I think the good thing about the State, it's a variety of people that have come together and really are about bringing arts to everyone.
The Chippewa Valley Theater Guild, Eau Claire Children's Theater, Chippewa Valley Symphony, and other local groups made the State their home.
You know, big symphony concerts, big dance recitals, you know, the big theater shows are all here. So there, we have that common bond, I guess, because of the State Theater.
To me, this was actually really exciting. So I'm like, wow, I can conduct the orchestra. I have this regular place, venue, right, to perform.
And so over the years, we've done probably 100 or more shows here.
Because of this, it brought us all together in the city. The citizens could see us as a unit, as an arts community.
The State was more than just a theater. The adjacent building that was used as a bus station and bowling alley was renovated into offices for the Arts Center, rental spaces, storage, set construction, and an art gallery.
One of our great places is the Janet Carson Art Gallery, showing different art throughout the Chippewa Valley and other areas. And that's really been a nice draw for people to come, see different ways that people are expressing themselves.
And it has been really just a wonderful beacon of the arts in western Wisconsin.
The Janet Carson Art Gallery displayed a variety of visual art for the community to come and view for free.
Basically, if it's a worthy visual art medium, we want it to be in the Janet Carson Gallery.
Costumes, sets, lights, and sound have to be ready for a show, but it seems the State always had some unique challenges because of its original design and the age of the building.
For years we did those sets downstairs, and then you'd have to take them, put them together and take them apart, and you would literally have to put them through a regular doorway. A whole lot of set of stairs. If you don't like stairs, you would not have liked the State.
This, as an old vaudeville house, it didn't need a lot of wing space, so there wasn't much. We've had two-story houses on stage. You know, you really have to Tetris and Garanimal the set pieces in there, and they have to kind of fit together back there.
The boiler is a very finicky beast. We still have it. It's still running, knock on wood.
The state continued to be the home for the arts, local theater, and community events for the next 3 decades. Hundreds of local and touring shows performed at the state. Some of the volunteers, actors, and technicians share their experiences at the State Theater.
Volunteering is always good, always good. And coming down here, it just was exciting.
Diary of Anne Frank,
Oh.
where we, it was a beautiful show, and we built this wonderful,
right out
over the pit, and then come to find out it was totally against the fire code.
There's a lot of new friendships that form. There's always an interesting mixture of returning actors and new people. There's always a mix. There's really just so much to be gained by, you know, working with a group like this.
WEAU's Judy Clark sat down with some longtime volunteers from the Chippewa Valley Theater Guild and Eau Claire Children's Theater to share their stories of the state from over the years.
This stage has been home to countless performances. Can a few of you share your experiences and memories being on this stage? Joe, let's start with you.
I think my favorite memory, or memories I should say, is just the audiences in general. We've performed in front of audiences as small as 100 people to sold-out crowds when we did Little Mermaid, and having that different intensity and the responses and how you can feel the energy in the room. That's something that'll always hang with the state, and at least in my memory of it.
My memories kind of circle on all the folks that I appeared on stage with that are no longer with us. Over the course of 30 years, a lot can happen in lives, and there's some people that are no longer here that were wonderful, wonderful people, and I'm going to miss all of them. I miss all of them already, but not having this to come back to and remember them in this format is kind of sad, but it's a memory.
I have 3 children. I performed on the stage while pregnant with all 3 of them in at least one show. I opened a show here 5 days after getting married. So there are a lot of my major life events that I tie back to moments in this theater.
Besides being on stage, much of the magic happens behind the scenes. And can you share some of the memories you have had at the state and those behind the scenes moments?
In Mary Poppins, I was behind the scenes and like making her magic purse produce things, and hearing the shock of the audience from backstage when you can't be seen is a really cool feeling.
There's just so much that happens behind the scenes that people don't see that we work on, whether it's a confetti cannon, whether it's lighting effects or things flying in and out, and anything can go wrong at any time, and you kind of just have to stay on your feet about it.
Volunteerism obviously is a big part of community theater, and so why have you invested so many hours in the state?
Honestly, theater's a bit of an addiction. It's a really good way to put it. Like I said, I started when I was 16. I haven't stopped. I mean, volunteering, whether you're in the box office even, is still like, it's helping to create the magic for the audience. And it's I mean, being a part of it in any way it's fantastic.
Well, I spent most of my time in the pit. So I attended a lot of shows I never saw. Depending on where you were sitting, you might catch just a little glimpse, but most of the time you couldn't see anything but the conductor. I've made a lot of really good friends through shows. I sort of picked up a husband through a show. And it's just, I don't know, I call it my happy place.
Oh, and it's so rewarding. I mean, the growth of everything, whether that be the growth of yourself, playing a new character, creating something new, or reworking a character that you played before, or watching somebody new that's coming to the theater. I think, like, oh God, the countless amount of actors and hours that have worked, you know, and all of a sudden you have somebody new almost every show, and to see them come back and want to come back, or come to the shows to watch the shows, or come to these little parties, or what have you, it's amazing.
So what will you miss about the state?
Oh, so many things, you know. As an actor and as a director, I'm going to miss every little brick back there. I'm going to miss every little warped floorboard down here. And one of the things I'm going to miss as a director is being able to, if I feel like it, watch a show from the old projection booth up there. I found that that was one of the best places to watch a show, and it's very few people got to watch a show from up there.
I think I'm going to miss almost a feeling of like coming home at the start of every show. For a lot of people, this became a home, and we're going to miss that feeling of coming home and that feeling of knowing that we're going to be able to come back to our home. You know,
Well, I think I'll miss the most is that this was one of the first things when my family moved to Eau Claire that we went out and did. And in '95, we came here and saw our first show, and to me it was the most professional thing. And then 13 years later, I was up here doing a show.
I think a lot of us, as the last show came upon us, we were counting the shows that we'd done. How many shows did we do here? And I think for me, my number wound up being something like 45. And so 45 performances in the same space, like Kevin said, there's just this sense of comfort.
Finally, what was your favorite production to be involved in the state?
Oh, Oliver was the full production. It was the largest set I've ever seen on the State Theater. It was so many costumes and so many performers, so many kids.
My favorite one was Urinetown. That was the first show I got to do sound for, and that's a pretty large musical for that to be your first time working with any sound equipment.
Well, I'm going to go back to 2003 when the Theater Guild did Damn Yankees. Growing up, I wanted to be a baseball player before I ever wanted to be an actor. So when the chance came to direct that show, that's really what I wanted to do. And it made it extra special because I had my wife there in the pit, and I had my son. The only time we've appeared together or worked together in a show, he played one of the ball players, and I really cherish that memory.
It was going to be Damn Yankees in 2003 because we came out of the pit, we were on the stage, they built bleachers for us, so we had costumes. We were not just our own made-up costumes, we actually had costumes. And we were the crowd in the stands.
Mine would have to be The Little Mermaid in 2016. We actually did it twice. It was my favorite cartoon growing up as a kid, and I finally got to play a dream role of mine, which was Ursula.
So Urinetown, just like Sarah back in 2013. I loved that we were able to do a show that we weren't quite sure Eau Claire would like, and they loved it. And I really think that gave me a new appreciation for the audience and the city being willing to try new things.
Mine would be probably James and the Giant Peach, and the reason for that being is we had a couple school matinee performances, so the whole theater was filled with kids, and for a lot of them that was their first experience coming to a theater and seeing a live production. And I think that's really powerful, and those are the memories that really stick with me, is when we're introducing someone new to the magic of theater.
Well, thank you all for sharing your stories of the state.
From vaudeville house to movie theater and art center. For 90 years, the State Theater was the centerpiece of entertainment in Eau Claire. In August of 2018, the State closed its doors with a final performance of Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat by the Eau Claire Children's Theater, a performance of kids from Wisconsin, and an open house where community members could tour the facility one last time.
And the State's lovely. It's a lovely old theater, but really for us to go to that next step, you need something like the Pablo in order to encourage larger acts and just have more versatility in what people can have at that center.
The vision and passion that began at the State will now continue in the brand new Pablo Center at the Confluence. The Pablo Center, built in conjunction with the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire, includes a 1,200-seat main theater and a black box theater, along with a variety of other arts and classroom spaces. While the future of the State is uncertain, there is excitement among the arts groups to move into the new Pablo Center at the Confluence. The final shows and closing of the State have many members of the arts community reflecting back on their time at the State Theater.
You walk in those doors and it's like, yep, I've been here before. Yep, that ceiling's still cracked. Yep, that's still broken. And I got my favorite wiggly chair, but it's comfortable.
Not just me, everybody, I'm sure they felt, oh, this is the last time. So the level of the performance of the Chipiavre Symphony became so amazing. And because of this place.
And so for, over 3 decades probably, there's been tens of thousands of happy people who come to this theater, maybe hundreds of thousands, I suppose. Don't want to see it darkened.
It's the building to a certain extent, but it's the people who inhabited this building and made all the difference about its success.
It's a special place and we'll miss it so much.
It's my baby. I'm just going to miss it.